I walked downstairs to surprise him, with breakfast in bed on his birthday, but heard him tell another woman I was too plain to brag about, and he was milking me for stability. He flaunted the watch I bought, mocking me as a stupid wife with daddy's money, then coldly said I was just convenient. But the next morning, I emailed her a copy of our. I remember the smell of pancakes. That's the first thing that hits me when I think back to that morning. The butter, the syrup, the stupid vanilla candle I lit because I wanted the morning to feel special. It was his 32nd birthday, and I'd woken up early to make his favorite breakfast. Chocolate chip pancakes, black coffee, bacon crisped just the way he liked. I even wore the soft blue robe he once said made me look comfortably sexy. I wanted him to wake up smiling, but when I reached the bottom of the stairs, I froze. His voice was coming from the living room. Low, laughing, relaxed in a way I hadn't heard in months. He was on a video call, with her. At first, I thought it was just a coworker. He worked in marketing, always had some campaign to discuss, but then I heard my name. "She's too plain to brag about," he said, smirking at the screen. "I mean, she's nice, but come on, you've seen her. I'm just milking her for stability until I make partner." I felt my stomach twist. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I could hear her giggle. Then he held up the box I'd spent weeks saving for, the engraved Omega watch he'd wanted forever. "She actually bought me this," he said, laughing. "Full price. Like a stupid wife with daddy's money." The word wife hit me like a slap, not because it wasn't true, we'd been married 2 years, but because he said it like it was an insult. I must have made a sound because he turned. Our eyes met across the room. For a second, his face went blank. Then calmly, he ended the call. No panic, no guilt, no scrambling for words. He just stood up, stretched, and said, "I was never in love with you. You were just convenient." Something inside me broke cleanly, like glass under pressure. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I just stood there, holding the tray, pancakes cooling, syrup dripping onto the floor. That night, he slept in the guest room. I heard him snoring while I sat awake, staring at the watch box he'd tossed onto the counter. But the next morning, I got up early again, this time not to make breakfast. I made coffee. Sat down at my desk, and sent her an email. A copy of something he'd never wanted anyone to see. And that was just the beginning. When I met Ryan, I wasn't looking for love. I just moved to Dallas after my dad passed, and I was trying to build something that felt like a life again. I worked in real estate, nothing glamorous but steady, and he was a copywriter at an ad agency my firm partnered with. He was funny back then, or at least he seemed that way. Always saying the right thing, always making everyone feel like the room revolved around his attention. He used to call me Sunlight. Said I had a calm energy he didn't know he needed. I remember thinking that was beautiful. I didn't realize until later that he meant predictable. We started dating fast. Within months, he'd moved into my townhouse, saying his lease was too expensive and that he'd save money until he got promoted. I didn't mind, honestly. I liked taking care of him. I covered groceries, utilities, even his car insurance a few times when he said his paycheck was delayed. It felt good to be needed. When he proposed a year later, it wasn't some movie moment. He did it in the kitchen after dinner, with a ring he said his mom helped him pick out. I remember crying, not because it was romantic, but because it felt like stability after so much grief. My mom was thrilled. My friends were cautious. One of them, Tara, told me, "He's charming, but he doesn't do gratitude. Watch that." I laughed it off. The first cracks showed up right after the wedding. He quit his job to freelance, which turned into me covering all the bills. He said it was temporary. I believed him. Then I noticed he started dressing nicer, going out, networking more. He'd take phone calls in the other room, smiling that salesman smile I'd fallen for. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd roll his eyes and say, "Jesus, can't I have some privacy?" I told myself I was overreacting. I even started therapy, thinking maybe I was too controlling. Then there was the watch. He'd been talking about it for months, how it symbolized success, how he wanted something that said he made it. So when he got a small bonus from a freelance client, I offered to match it and surprise him with the Omega. He acted touched, kissed my forehead, told me I was the best wife. That was 6 weeks ago. Now, knowing what I know, I can't stop replaying every detail. Every moment he made me feel small. Every time he looked past me when I was talking. Every time I caught that flash of irritation when I interrupted his scrolling. The part that stings the most, I thought I was building a marriage. He was building an image. And the woman on the call, her name was Nicole. I didn't know it then, but I would soon. When I sent her that email the next morning, I attached a PDF labeled Joint Financial Disclosure, 2024. She probably opened it expecting something boring. She had no idea it contained proof that Ryan had been siphoning money from both of us. The email sat in my sent folder for an hour before she replied. Her message was short, almost polite. "What is this?" "Who are you?" I didn't even hesitate. "I'm Ryan's wife. The woman he told you was just temporary. Those are records from our joint account. Notice the transfers to your Venmo every month." It took her 10 minutes to respond. Then, "He said you were crazy, but these amounts match what I thought was his rent." That was the first domino. Within an hour, she sent me screenshots, texts, photos, messages that made my hands shake. He told her he was divorced. He'd told her I cheated. He even showed her pictures of our house, claiming it was his. Apparently, while I was covering bills and groceries, he'd been sending her money, helping her get on her feet, he said. Except the money came from our joint savings, over $18,000 in a year. She wasn't some random hookup either. They'd been seeing each other for almost 2 years. She thought they were moving in together once his divorce finalized. When I read that, something inside me clicked off. The sadness evaporated, replaced by this strange, calm fury. I didn't tell him what I knew, not yet. I went to work, came home, and pretended everything was fine. Cooked dinner, asked about his day, watched him lie with that easy smile. That weekend, he said he was going to Austin for a client retreat. I knew the truth. He was meeting her. She even texted me, asking if she should confront him or wait. I told her, wait. Let him dig his own grave. While he was gone, I started gathering everything: bank records, tax filings, screenshots, emails. I even backed up his texts from the iPad he'd logged into months ago and forgot. He'd been messaging multiple women. Nicole was just the main one. He came home Sunday night acting exhausted. Said the trip was productive. I nodded, kissed his cheek, and handed him a beer. He never noticed that the home office door was locked. That week, I started moving money. Quietly, little by little, enough that he wouldn't notice right away. By Friday, I had proof of his cheating, financial fraud, and tax evasion, because apparently he hadn't declared half his freelance income. And then came the night everything shifted. Nicole texted me again. "He's here, he's acting weird, said he wants to talk about the future. Should I record this?" I said yes. 2 hours later, she sent me the audio. And what I heard changed everything I thought I knew about Ryan, and about what he'd really been planning. The audio started with laughter, his fake, charming laugh, the same one he used when he was selling a lie. You could hear glasses clinking in the background, the hum of a restaurant. Nicole must have set her phone on the table. Then Ryan's voice dropped, low and careful. "I'm done pretending. I can't drag this out much longer." The goal was to get her to sign the refinance papers, but she's stalling. Nicole sounded confused. "Refinance? I thought you said the house was yours." He sighed, annoyed, like she'd missed an obvious detail. "It will be. She just doesn't know it yet. Once she signs, I'll get her name off the deed and she'll walk away thinking it's just a lower interest rate. Then we sell, split the profits, and move to Austin like we planned." Silence. Then Nicole said, shaky, "Wait, so you're actually taking her house?" "Not taking, just making things official. She owes me. She's been living off her dad's inheritance, acting like it's our money. This way I get what's fair and we can start fresh." That's when I stopped breathing. He wasn't just cheating, he was setting me up. The refinance papers had been sitting on our counter for a week. He told me our mortgage lender found a better rate and just needed my signature. I'd almost signed, but work got crazy and I put it off. That hesitation had saved my home. He went on, bragging. "She won't question it, she's gullible. She thinks I'm still into her, that I'm just stressed. I can fake affection for another month." And if she finds out, Nicole asked, then she'll cry, move out, and I'll spin it. People always believe the calm one. The calm one, that's what he called himself. Like I was some emotional mess he had to manage. I listened to that audio 3 times. Every word peeled away the last bit of denial I had left. Nicole was silent for most of it. Then she said quietly, Ryan, I don't want any part of this. It's not right. He laughed. Don't get moral on me now. You're already part of it. That was the end of the recording. I sat there in my office, the screen glowing, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hit pause. The man I'd loved had not only betrayed me emotionally, he'd planned to strip me clean and toss me aside. Nicole called me later that night, crying. She said she didn't know about any of it, that she'd been stupid. I believed her, not because I wanted to, but because her shock sounded too real to fake. We made a plan. I'd pretend I was still clueless. She'd keep seeing him. And together, we'd make sure his plan exploded right in his face. But before we could even set it in motion, Ryan made a move none of us saw coming. And it changed everything again. After the recording, I stopped being the broken wife. I became someone else. Cold, focused, strategic. I knew if I confronted him outright, he'd spin it, make me look crazy, erase evidence, or worse, convince Nicole to stay quiet. So I did what he always accused me of being incapable of. I played dumb. That Monday morning, I made him breakfast again. French toast, strawberries, black coffee. I smiled while he kissed my cheek and told me he had a big meeting. He was probably texting her under the table. He had no idea that, while he ate, I was copying files from his laptop onto a flash drive hidden inside my robe pocket. I had one goal: make sure every single lie he told came back to bite him legally, publicly, and personally. First, I went to a friend of my dad's, a real estate lawyer named Greg. I told him I suspected fraud and showed him the refinance papers. He whistled. If you'd sign this, he'd have full ownership once the transfer processed. Smart girl. We drew up a plan to freeze the account tied to the mortgage and flag any unauthorized transactions. Then I called my bank and moved the rest of my savings to a separate account under my maiden name. Next, I reached out to Nicole. We decided she'd keep talking to him, act like she still believed his lies, and forward every text or email he sent. She was nervous, but she said she wanted to help make things right. Meanwhile, I collected evidence like it was my full-time job, bank records, DMs, even a fake work itinerary he'd emailed her where he described me as his landlord. I put everything in a cloud folder labeled Tax Docs 2024, but I wasn't done. Ryan prided himself on his reputation. His entire freelance career depended on being seen as trustworthy, charismatic, reliable. So I started lining up small, subtle hits to that image. I forwarded screenshots of his shady payment schemes to his biggest client, an eco-brand that marketed itself on integrity. I used an anonymous email. By midweek, he started acting jumpy, checking his phone more, snapping at me for hovering. I just smiled and asked if he wanted dinner. Then Friday night came. He was supposed to meet Nicole at a hotel in Addison to talk about next steps. She texted me, "Should I cancel?" I said no. I told her to go, record everything, and tell him she was in if he could prove he was serious about the house deal. Meanwhile, I set my own plan in motion. I printed copies of the refinance scam, his fake client invoices, and that awful quote from the video call, too plain to brag about. Each page went into an envelope. One for his boss, one for his mother, one for the friend who introduced us, and one, just one, was going to Nicole's employer, because I'd discovered something new in those messages. She wasn't just his side piece, she was his coworker. His direct client contact at the marketing agency that handled over half his freelance income. If she went down, so would he. I didn't plan to destroy her, I wanted to wake her up. But I needed her to see what he really was, and I needed the fallout to be public enough that he couldn't crawl out of it. I was ready to drop everything Monday morning. But Saturday night, before I could act, Nicole called me, her voice shaking. "He knows, Anna, he knows. And he just said something that doesn't make sense. He said you'll never be able to stop him because it's already done." When Nicole said that, "It's already done," I felt this cold rush of dread. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She said he'd shown up to the hotel earlier than planned, calm and smug. He told her he knew she'd been acting strange, that she was too loyal to keep secrets. Then, in that same measured tone he always used when he wanted control, he said, "Anna thinks she's smart, but she's already signed everything that matters." I hung up and tore through the house. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely see straight. The refinance papers were still on the counter, unsigned, but then I remembered something else. 2 weeks earlier, Ryan had told me our mortgage lender sent a few updates that needed initialing. I hadn't paid much attention. He'd slid them across the table while I was on a work call. He said, "Just sign the bottom so I can send it back before 5. I'd scribbled my signature on 3 pages without reading a word. It hit me like a punch. He hadn't needed the refinance papers yet. He'd already prepped other documents. I called Greg, my lawyer friend, and explained everything. He told me to bring whatever I had over immediately. I didn't even change out of my pajamas. We spent 2 hours going through every sheet of paper I'd ever signed for that house. Sure enough, Ryan had slipped a quitclaim deed into that stack. It effectively transferred half my ownership to him. It wasn't the full con he'd planned, but it gave him enough leverage to sell or remortgage the property if the bank didn't catch it. Greg leaned back and said, "He knew exactly what he was doing. He probably forged the notary seal too. This is criminal." That word, criminal, made me feel oddly calm. It gave everything clarity. While Greg began drafting a fraud report, I called Nicole back. She was crying, panicking. Said Ryan had stormed out after she confronted him about the audio. He told her she'd regret crossing him. An hour later, I got a text from Ryan. "I know you've been talking to Nicole. Don't play dumb. You always make things worse for yourself. We'll talk when I'm home." It wasn't even angry, just cold, like he was the one in control. But here's the part that twisted my stomach. When he got home that night, he didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He acted normal. Kissed me on the forehead. Told me he'd forgiven me for being paranoid. Then he said something that made every nerve in my body go still. "I'm glad we're past that little bump. I went ahead and finished the refinance online so you wouldn't have to worry about it. Everything handled now." He smiled. Poured himself a drink, turned on the TV, and that's when I realized what he'd done. He'd used my digital signature. All the documents he'd been sending to the lender weren't to a bank, they were to a fake email account he'd set up, spoofed to look official. And he'd already submitted everything. He had control of half the house. He had the signed documents. And now, he was pretending like nothing had happened, like he was daring me to catch up. But he didn't know that I wasn't alone anymore. Nicole and I had enough proof to bury him, and I had one last card to play, something even he couldn't talk his way out of. When I finally learned why he'd done it, it didn't make me cry. It made me sick. After Greg filed the fraud report, a friend at the title office called me privately. She said, "Anna, I don't know what's going on with your husband, but you need to see this." She sent me a scan of the deed application Ryan had submitted online. Under intended use of proceeds, he'd written, to consolidate personal debts and prepare for investment relocation. That didn't make sense until she added, "It looks like he already has another mortgage application, under a different LLC. I asked her to send it. When I opened the document, my name wasn't on it, but Nicole was. He wasn't just trying to steal the house, he was trying to flip it. He'd planned to sell our place to an investor under a shell company, one he'd quietly created using my social security number. The sale proceeds, hundreds of thousands, would go directly into a new joint property investment with Nicole's name on the paperwork. Except Nicole didn't know any of that. He'd told her they were getting a loan for a business venture. He'd even mocked up a fake contract with her signature copy-pasted from a prior email. He'd planned to make her legally complicit in fraud so that if anything went wrong, we would both go down and he would walk away clean. He built the perfect exit strategy, 2 women he could discard and blame, both conveniently tied to his scheme. I remember staring at the screen, my pulse in my ears, and thinking, he didn't just stop loving me. He'd never loved me. He'd studied me. He knew my weaknesses, my guilt, my fear of conflict, my tendency to fix instead of fight. He'd built a relationship around those weaknesses, and when I became less useful, he started crafting my downfall before I even noticed he'd checked out. That's the part that chilled me most. It wasn't random cruelty. It was intentional architecture. Every compliment had been manipulation. Every fight had been data collection. He even told Nicole something once that I can't forget. She showed me the text. "I like women who think loyalty is a moral code. They don't see the knife until it's in their back." That was him. That was who I married. I thought about all the times he'd watched me work late, asking about my passwords just in case. The times he'd offered to handle our taxes because I was tired. The way he always made me feel small when I questioned anything. He didn't want a partner. He wanted an asset. And now that I understood his reason, his endgame, I knew exactly how to destroy him. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. Legally. Publicly. Permanently. Because he'd underestimated the one thing that wasn't in his calculations: how dangerous a calm woman becomes when she stops trying to be understanding. I didn't want fireworks. I wanted finality. When you discover someone built your life like a spreadsheet, dramatic catharsis feels good on TV, but in real life you want clean lines and receipts. So that's what I delivered. The morning after Greg filed the fraud report, I woke up early and made the same stupid breakfast I'd made the day he exposed me: chocolate chip pancakes. I set them on the counter, took a photo that looked casual, then sent it to 3 people. The mortgage underwriter Greg had introduced me to, the partner at Ryan's biggest client, and the woman who'd once bragged about my gift in that video call, his mother. I didn't explain. I just attached the cloud folder labeled Tax Docs 2024 and the audio clip from the hotel. The subject line read, "For your awareness, potential fraud and misuse of funds." They replied before I finished my coffee. The underwriter called the county title office, which put an emergency hold on any transfers tied to our deed. The client paused all payments to Ryan's invoices pending audit. His agency HR opened an investigation after I forwarded the messages that showed him grooming Nicole and laundering money through fake invoices. His mother, who'd always adored him and trusted him with family finances, forwarded everything to a private attorney she knew, asking bluntly, "Is he criminally liable?" I watched the dominoes fall and felt something like cold satisfaction. Not joy. There was no joy in watching the man I once loved get dismantled, but there was relief. For once, the truth moved faster than his bullshit. When Ryan realized things were collapsing, he tried his old tricks. Charm, anger, begging. He showed up at my office in uptown Dallas, acting like a man who'd been startled by a storm he thought he could outrun. I met him at the lobby glass doors, coffee in hand, and for the first time since the first pancake mornings, I was smiling without effort. "Anna, listen," he started. "No," I said. I had Greg on standby and a copy of the police report in my bag. "You signed my name on documents you forged. You siphoned our savings. You set up Nicole with fake contracts. The county has it all. The bank froze transfers. Your biggest client has opened an audit file. Your mother's hired counsel. You should talk to a lawyer." He laughed, the practiced laugh, and for a moment I thought he might try to gaslight me in front of the security guard. Instead, he slunk away, the posture of a man realizing his reputation was no longer currency. Legal proceedings followed, not quick but thorough. The county removed the quitclaim. The bank pursued recovery for the stolen funds. His clients were warned, several terminated contracts. HR at his agency put him on paid leave pending criminal inquiry. Nicole cut off contact and cooperated fully. She'd seen his plan laid bare and didn't want to share in a prison sentence. His mother refused to bail him out once she read the texts. I sat through depositions. I handed over screenshots, bank records, and the audio clip. I watched him in courtrooms and conference rooms, tired and small, trying to explain himself to people who didn't owe him their trust. There was no public spectacle, no dramatic shouting outside the courthouse, no social media pylons. The outcome was quieter, but it was final. He paid restitution where it was possible, lost contracts, and most importantly, he lost the narrative he had carefully curated. The home stayed mine. The bank rescinded the fraudulent filings. The watch I'd bought stayed in a drawer where I smashed the crystal with a hammer before donating it to a museum collection donation drive, something symbolic that hurt him more than glancing at it ever could. Months later, I signed my name on a real loan to refinance under my own terms, with Greg beside me. I walked out into sunlight that meant something different now. Not naive warmth, but the practical, steady light of someone who'd rebuilt from receipts and lawyers and late nights. I still have the memory of his voice saying, "You were just convenient." It's a small thing to carry. Mostly, it reminds me why I'll never confuse kindness for weakness again. And sometimes, when I pass a storefront that sells nice watches, I smile and keep walking, because the best thing I got back wasn't money or property. It was my sense of who I am when no one else's ledger defines me. Final note: revenge is boring, closure is quiet. The only thing I still enjoy showing off is how well I've budgeted.